Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first lesson of meditation from Sinai. Now, about maybe 12 or 13 years ago, when I was Chabad rabbi in Olympia, Washington, there was a prominent Jewish businessman that I really wanted to meet. And it took a little while for me to get the contact information, to make the connection, to actually get through, and finally have an appointment in this person's office. And this man said to me that he has not been in shul for over 30 years. He's a very spiritual person, but simply has not found anything spiritual within Judaism. So no need to attend services for 30 years. And I look around the room and I see in this office, there are all kinds of Buddhist statues, paraphernalia, religious iconography. And the person continues to explain how the person is, in fact, a Buddhist. And within Buddhism, he has found tremendous amounts of spirituality. There actually is a very prominent Jewish atheist, scientist, author, podcaster, talks about how he sees absolutely no value within Judaism, but sees a lot of value in the meditations as practiced by Buddhists. What results is this kind of stereotype that meditation is not a Jewish thing. If you want meditation, you need to go to various Eastern religions, Eastern traditions. There are so many Jews that are under this impression that Jews who want to pursue some type of deeper spirituality, a spirituality that is connected to some type of meditative practice, that they often end up in Buddhism, so much so that there's an actual term called Jubus. And there's a tremendous amount of people in leadership roles within the Buddhist religion that are in fact absolutely 100% Jewish. So now I asked you this question. Have you ever meditated before, right? Raise your hand if you have engaged and practiced and pursued any type of meditation. Right? I see some hands went up, but not necessarily everyone. When you practice this meditation, would you say that it was entirely within a Jewish context or not necessarily? Debbie, so you're saying maybe
it was in
the
religious, it's not a religious context at all.
All right. Craig was not exactly a Jewish experience. However, the truth is, the reality is that meditation has a very deep and rich Jewish tradition and Jewish connection. As we're going to see shortly, Jewish meditation goes all the way back to the very first Jew and is quite prominently embedded in so many of our Jewish practices, even ones that we do on a daily basis. So the goal of this course, through the next 6 weeks, we are going to explore the beautiful history of Jewish meditation. And we're going to understand how this particular spiritual technology works, how it works, why it's so effective. And we're going to learn how to practice it in our own lives and be able to enjoy the benefits from it. We're going to learn how to moderate our emotions, how to expand our awareness, and to reframe our life in the most healthy possible way. So we're going to gain some real life tools that you could put into practice right away, immediately, from the moment that the first class is over tonight. We have to begin with, of course, the big question, which is, what is meditation? So many people hear that word. It's a very loaded word. It can turn people off. It can excite people. What do we mean by meditation? And of course, what do we mean in the Jewish context of meditation? So first, the technical definition of the word meditation is to engage in contemplative reflection, right? So to engage in contemplation or reflection. But there's a very key Jewish detail that adds a whole nother dimension to this title, which is thinking to the point that you're feeling something. That is the idea of Jewish meditation. I'll say it again. It's thinking about something to the point that you begin feeling something. It's a process that begins in your head, but it pulls at the heart as well. Based on this meditation that I have given you, based on the definition that I've given you of meditation, I want to ask the question again. Have any of you participated in meditation? I had a few people had their heads up before, but at this point, I think every person's hands should be up. Absolutely. What does it mean to have meditated? Think about this for a second. Have you ever thought about someone, right, that you were in love with? And you thought about that person to the extent that it made you feel good inside? Has this ever happened to you? Think about someone that you love and it arouses some emotions within you. That is meditation. Have you ever thought about someone who wronged you, hurt you, caused you pain, did some damage to you, and that actually got you all frustrated and angry? That is exactly meditation. It's focusing on a thought, an idea that brings about an emotion. So this is what Jewish meditation essentially is. It's focusing your thoughts to the point where feelings are going to be produced. We do this all the time. However, we do it all the time without intention. We're not doing it purposefully. The practice of meditation is to do exactly this, but with intention, with purpose, in order to achieve a very specific goal. So I mentioned before that meditation is very, very Jewish. Let's go to text number 1. Debbie, if you could please read for us text number 1. It's on page 3 in the textbook.
Okay. Okay. Meditation is organic to Judaism, serving a sizable role in Jewish life.
Not from the English on the bottom where it says text 1, career meditators under there.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yes.
Yeah, and you already told us that. So the patriarchs chose, should I start with the Hebrew or
No, English? You could go
English,
right for the English. Yeah.
Okay. The patriarchs chose to be shepherds so that they could be alone in the wilderness, where the air is clean and pure, and they would be far from other people, for the sake of secluding themselves in divine meditation.
So how far back does meditation go within Judaism? To Abraham, to Yitzchak, to Yaakov, but not just them. Moshe, King David, these are all people who are described as shepherds. Why did they become shepherds? Because they wanted to have the time to be able to meditate deeply, to meditate productively. So it's as Jewish as you can possibly get. Meditation is so essential to Judaism that really it's at the heart and that's at the core of what prayer, what davening is really all about. Stephanie, would you like to read text number 2 on page number 5, meditative prayer?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
We must approach prayer with reverence. The early pious sages would pause in thought for 1 hour so that they could focus their hearts on God and only then pray.
The Mishnah is not telling us because it wants us to give a beautiful story of what took place in the ancient Jewish times. The Mishnah is telling us, how is davening supposed to be meaningful for you? How is davening meant to be a real heartfelt spiritual experience? It's very simple. Through meditation. It's very simple. The only way that you're going to result in a truly heartfelt, meaningful davening experience through meditation, and the sages would focus their mind, focus their hearts for an hour before they would pray on a daily basis. So going all the way back, we see that the patriarchs, Moshe, King David, he can't get more Jewish than these people. The whole concept of davening, something which we do 3 times a day, is very much connected to the idea of meditation, focusing your mind and producing real and genuine emotions. So what is the method and the goal of Jewish meditation? We are meant to focus on Jewish spiritual ideas. These spiritual ideas are going to guide our emotions and is going to result in beautiful actions. Now, there are 3 forms of Jewish meditation. We have this in a chart in your book, figure 1.2 on page 6. We also have it right here on the PowerPoint. Number 1 is called hispoididus. The word hispoididus means seclusion, and this is more of a meditation which focuses on transcendence. It's not the topic of today's class, so we're not going to focus on it, but in further classes, we're going to get into a little bit more. A second type of meditation is called hisboinunus, which is translated as contemplation. So this would be a more contemplative type of meditation, also not the topic of today's class, so don't worry about the definition. And then we have the third type of Jewish meditation, which is called kavana. The word kavana means focus, and it's about mindfulness or having intention within meditation. Throughout this course, we're going to talk about all of them. In some of the lessons, we may talk about more than one. However, today in the first class, we're going to be focusing on the idea of kavana, mindfulness or intention meditation. Now, at this point, I want to point out that there are many other styles of meditation that exist within the world that are not part of Jewish meditation. Many of those originate in foreign religious practices that very well could be described as avodah zarah and idol worship, and are very much not kosher for a Jew to practice. I'm not saying they don't work. They might be wonderful. They might be very effective. But for a Jew, it's not healthy for your soul. It's not healthy for your neshama. You may not be aware, you may have no idea, but the words, the phrases, the tunes are very much rooted in religions and ideologies that are the opposite of ultimately what Judaism is trying to is trying to achieve. Because meditation is so valuable and really has so much benefits, it's really important that we practice kosher meditation, the most healthy form of meditation for a Jew. Any questions on anything that we've talked about so far? Yes, Debbie.
Yeah. So that's really interesting because I specifically teach Tai Chi, which luckily has no connotation to a religion, and that's meditation and motion. It's interesting. My question is about yoga, because one time I was reading an article and they talked about a very religious person who was Jewish wrote the article and said that yoga and Tai Chi yoga was fine because it depended on your intention, is what they said. If your intention was just about the meditation, the mindfulness, as opposed to worship, I suppose. I don't recall exactly.
So I am not an expert on any other forms of Jewish meditation. Okay. There are some articles in this book and that are also on the continuing education website, which I will post at the end. Yeah. So okay. I just want to make a brief comment. Rabbi Landis is a teacher at Beitar Hillel High in Milwaukee. His father was a psychologist and was very much involved in meditation, yoga, things of that nature, and corresponded extensively with the Rebbe. And the bottom line of the correspondence is much of yoga and other meditative practices are absolutely rooted and originate within idol worshiping practices. You may not know it on the surface, you may not see it. The person who's teaching it to you may have no idea, but the names of the positions and the chanting that goes on is literally straight out of an idol worshiping religion. So when pursuing this type of stuff, it's important to get as much information as possible. So even though your intention, right, is nothing that is idol worshiping, right, A Jewish person would not, I mean, this may not be the best example, but a Jewish person certainly would not use a cross, for example, as part of any exercise meditational routine, even though you're having no religious connotation, but it's a cross, right? So similarly, we have to be careful when approaching this type of stuff. And I can tell you that everything that we are going to be discussing in these 6 weeks is certified kosher Jewish meditation, okay? So the topic for today is kavana, which is meditational mind control. We're going to be using meditational mind control to mediate and to temper negative emotions. Now, have you ever experienced a negative emotion? Has it ever happened? Maybe a little bit anxiety. Maybe you got angry once. Could be you felt a little bit judgmental. Maybe even recently, maybe even today, you experienced some type of negative emotion. Now, I know everyone in this class is very righteous, is very calm, but I imagine if you're not physically raising your hands, internally, your hands are absolutely raised, and that you probably experienced some type of negative emotion at some point. We are all human beings. It is perfectly natural, it's perfectly normal to have some type of negative feelings. Now, wouldn't it be great to be able to get rid of those negative feelings, not to have to experience them anymore, not to have those negative feelings get in the way of our happiness and relationships and communication? I think that would be pretty good. Now, the Torah actually gives us an example for how we are able to get rid of all kinds of negative emotions. And these are relayed to us when the Kohen gives instructions to Jewish soldiers before they go out into battle. This is text number 3. Phil, would you like to read text number 3, page 8?
Okay. As you approach the battle, the Kohen shall come near and speak to the people. He shall say to them, "Hear, Israel, today you are approaching the battle against your enemies. Do not be discouraged. Do not be afraid. Do not be alarmed or terrified because of them."
Fabulous. The Torah tells us, what do? The Kohen says, do not be afraid. Applying it to our modern situations, I am saying to you, do not be anxious. Do not have fear. Do not get angry. Do not get jealous. Do not be judgmental. And the problem is solved. Now, does that work? Is this effective? That's not effective. So the negative emotions don't just magically disappear. No, it is not with magic that these negative emotions disappear, but rather it is with meditation, right? When the Kohen says, don't be afraid, he doesn't just mean let it disappear. Through the practice of Jewish meditation, there are techniques that you actually can get rid of your negative feelings. You could actually replace them with positive feelings. And as we're going to discuss tonight, you can even radically reshape objective reality, which results in actual improvement in your life. Does this sound too good to be true? You'll tell me at the end of the class tonight, right? You'll tell me. Before we actually explore the meditations themselves, I want to explore how and why they actually work, right? Why these strategies are going to be effective. To do this, we're going to study a little bit of Kabbalah, a little bit of Hasidic philosophy. Some of these ideas may be familiar from previous classes. For some of you, these ideas might be brand new. Now, Kabbalah teaches that the human soul possesses 10 core powers or abilities. These are known aptly as the 10 powers of the soul. You see this chart, you have it in your book. There's a beautiful painting here on page 9. If you go to page number 10, we have exactly the chart that is on the board. This is typically how the 10 powers are depicted. There's a lot of meaning to the chart, right, left, center. We're not going to get into that for the moment. What's relevant for us today is the 10 powers and abilities that exist within the soul of every single human being is divided into two sections. 3 intellectual, 3 that are part of the cognitive process, and 7 that are emotional. So that means, what is our soul kind of made of? Our soul is made up of ideas and feelings. Now, if you look at the chart, you see 3 intellect, and then you see the 7 emotions, the ideas and the feelings. The ideas sit on top of the feelings. The intellect in the chart sits on top of the emotions, which indicates that we have the natural ability for our intellect to control our emotions, right? The intellect sits on top of our emotions. What this means is that our emotions are directly formed and guided by our ideas. Sorry, by the way. Wait. When the mind understands, the emotions follow. This is how our soul is designed. This is how our soul is created. There's intellect and emotions. The intellect sits on top. When the mind understands, the emotions follow. When we understand, when we really understand that something is good and positive for us, we are going to feel drawn toward it. When we really understand that something is bad for us, right, we are going to feel repulsed by it. Because when the mind understands, the emotions follow. That's simply how the machine works. That's how the soul operates. In the book of Tanya, the foundational book of Chabad Hasidic philosophy, the Alter Rebbe calls the intellect parents and the emotions are children. Because very simply, it is our mind, it's our intellect, right? It's the ideas that we have in our head, which really give birth to the emotions that we have. Text number 4. I guess I will go for text number 4 on page 11 in your book. This is from the book of Tanya. The human soul is divided into 2 categories, intelligence and emotion. The intellectual faculties, namely chokhmah, wisdom, bina, understanding, and das, knowledge, are referring to as the mothers and the source of the emotions, for the emotions are the offspring of the intelligence. Now, on a side point, you might have recognized that the 3 intellectual the 3 components of the intellect, Chachma, Bina, and Das, actually form the acronym of Chabad. That is the philosophy of what Chabad is all about. Chabad is when the mind understands, the emotions follow. Right? Want to be the best Jew that you possibly can be? The more you know, the more you understand, the more true, the more real, the more deep that your emotions are ultimately going to be. So the Alter Rebbe explains the intellect are the parents, the emotions are the offspring, the intellect gives birth to the emotions. What did we do before? We did a little meditative exercise. Think about somebody that you love. Your mind is going to give birth to emotions. Think about your bubby. Think about her stuffed cabbage. Think about her matzo ball soup. Think about a beautiful Pesach Seder memory, right? It's going to warm your heart. The idea that you think, the emotion is going to be born. We talked about thinking about something negative, somebody who wronged you, right? Some type of negative experience, and how that will give birth to and will create that negative emotion. This principle applies to thinking about anything to produce a desired emotion. When the mind understands, the emotion is going to follow. So far, we have discussed the makeup of the soul. We've discussed the 10 powers of the soul, 3 intellect and 7 emotional. But that's just the soul itself. Now we're going to move to the expression of the soul. How does the soul actually express its ideas and feelings, its intellect and emotion? And that is through 3 garments. Number 1 is thinking. Number 2 is speaking, and number 3 is doing. And if you look in your book, we have a chart, figure 1.4, on the bottom of page 11 that has this information there for you as well, that you can review it. Thinking, speaking, and doing, that's not the soul. The soul is ideas and feelings. The idea that is in your soul can be expressed through thinking, through speaking, or through doing. The emotion, the feeling that you have within your soul, that can be expressed through thinking, through speaking, through doing. In other words, the ideas and the feelings that exist within the soul are part of the soul's subconscious. It's part of the subconscious. The garments of the soul, that's the thinking, the speaking, and the doing part, that is part of the conscious expression of the soul itself. That's where the ideas and the feelings really come into focus. So in the subconscious, there are going to be ideas that you know and that you understand, but if you're not actively thinking about it, it will have no effect. So perhaps right now, you have some bills to pay. Maybe they're large, maybe they're due immediately, maybe you're having some challenges paying them. However, you're not thinking about that right now because you're taking a class with me, or maybe there's something else going on in your mind, but you're not thinking about it right now. So they're ideas that you have, it's things that you understand. However, you're not actively thinking about it, therefore it has no effect, right? There are ideas that we have, ideas, but they have no effect on our mood because we're not actively thinking about it. But when a person has active thoughts, the active thoughts shape your consciousness in a very real way. It's your active thoughts that are going to moderate your mood. Whatever you are thinking about right now, that is what is going to shape the way that you feel. Right? If you are running late to something, you are going to feel nervous and you are going to feel stressed because that is what you're thinking about right now. Right? Whatever it is that you're thinking about actively, that is what is going to generate the mood that you're in. So there are 3 partners essentially in the creation of the mood that you are. So there's the mood that you're in. That's number 1, right? There's the mood that you're in, however you're particular feeling. That mood that you're feeling was born out of your understanding because you understood a particular situation, therefore you had a particular feeling about it. How was that feeling ultimately created? It's because you were actively thinking about it. Active thought is what is the fuel for any emotion or mood that you're in. When the thought is active, so is the emotion. You know what that means? If you remove the thought, you also have the ability to remove the emotion. The emotion has no fuel, the emotion has no energy. The emotion has no food, the emotion is going to die as well. If you have ever been anxious, nervous about something in life, you know exactly what that means. Your anxiety is fueled by constant thinking about it. You're constantly aware of it. It's constantly running around your head, which is what produces the anxiousness. However, if you stop thinking about it, if the thoughts dissipate, you're able to focus on something else, you know what happens? The anxiety disappears as well. Understanding this process of how our active thought has the ability to control our emotions in the most real and practical, orderly way, absolutely life-changing. Because through this, you can very much disrupt the negative thought patterns, and we can disrupt the negative emotions that we experience. Can this be done? Absolutely, it can be done. Because we have the power to consciously choose our garments. Notice that the word that the Kabbalists used for the expression of the soul, things like thinking, speaking, and doing, is the word garment. Why did they use the word garment? Because you could put on and you could take off any garment that you want. It's up to you. You choose the garment. And when we realize that the garment is the fuel for our emotion, we have the ability to choose the garment. We have the ability to choose whether we fuel that emotion or whether we remove the fuel from that emotion, which will result in that emotion disappearing and dying. So we can at any moment choose what we think. May not be easy, not saying it's easy, but with Jewish meditational exercises, it can be done. And you'll see how it can be a real superpower in your life. Now, any questions on anything that we've done so far? All right, so in modern psychology, the term for being aware of what we're thinking, right? Being aware of which particular garment that we are being engaged in, being aware of the thoughts that we have, it's called being metacognitive, right? That's the term is called being metacognitive. It means that we're paying attention to the flow of our thoughts. So the first step in mitigating negative emotions, you have to become metacognitive. You have to take a step back and say, okay, I am in XYZ mood, right? Horrible mood, whatever mood I am in right now. What am I thinking about? What is the flow of my thoughts? You need to identify what are the thoughts that are in your mind that are producing these negative emotions. We have to recognize the impact of those thoughts. Recognize that stressing and focusing and going over and over and over again with these particular negative feelings, these negative thoughts, are absolutely producing the mood that I'm in now. And then we have the ability to disrupt those thoughts that we deem to be negative. And you can see this right here in the words of the Tanya. Again, text number 5, Debbie. If you would like to read text number 5, which is on page 13, the bottom of the page.
Okay. Yes, page 13 at the bottom of the page. Yes, the mind naturally controls the heart. Humans were created from birth with the ability to exercise willpower to control the drives of our hearts so that they not be expressed in our behavior, speech, or thought. Able to divert our attention completely from things our hearts crave to something entirely different.
So the Alter Rebbe says something that's incredibly important here. He says, in order to be able to do this, you don't have to be a spiritual giant. You don't have to be a tzaddik. This is not a product of 50 years of intense spiritual exercise. The Alter Rebbe says that a person is born with the natural ability to control your thoughts, to choose what you're going to think about. There's a great story of a chassid of the Magen Mizrich, right? The Magen Mizrich was the second leader of the Hasidic movement. One of his chassidim came to him and said, Rebbe, I have a problem. I can't control my thoughts. Help me, teach me, guide me. So the Maggid says, the solution will be found with Reb Zev of Zhitomar. Go to him. The chassid travels to the town of Zhitomar. It's in the winter. It's getting dark. It's cold. He knocks on the door. Nobody's answering the door. Nobody. He knocks again. He knocks again. He looks through the window. The light is on. There are people in the house. They're moving around. It's impossible for them not to hear him. Nobody answers the door. He knocks again. He knocks again. He's getting cold. He's starting to freeze. It is the winter. 1 hour goes by. He's knocking. 2 hours go by. Finally, he's shivering. He's shaking. The door opens and he's welcomed warmly by Reb Zev. He sits him down at the table, gives him a hot tea. He warms his bones. And he tells him why he's here. But first he says to him, Reb Zev, I don't understand. You saw me. You heard me. I was knocking on the door. I was knocking on the door. I was knocking on the door. How come you didn't let me in? And Reb Zev said to him, I'll tell you very simple. I am the owner of this house. I am the boss of this house. And I let in only people when I want to and how I want to. All of a sudden, the chassid has a big smile on his face, and he understood exactly why the Maggid Mizrich sent him here. He was having trouble controlling your thoughts. What is the message? You are in control. Exactly the same way you have the ability to decide who you are going to let into your home, to whom you will open the door, so too you have control as to which thoughts you will dwell on and focus on. You don't have control of who knocks on your door. You don't have control on which thoughts pop into your head. But you absolutely have control, the same way you can control who comes into your house, who you open the door to. You can control which thoughts you let into your mind. This is Jewish meditation. Choosing which thoughts you are going to focus on, and it is those thoughts that are going to create the emotional experience that you're having at that moment. It is exactly this advice that the Tzemach Tzedek, who is the third Rebbe of Chabad, gave to his daughter-in-law's father. Like his daughter-in-law's father, about 200 years ago, his name was Rabbi Shlomo Freitas. And he was going through health challenges, financial struggles. His life was declining, and he was consumed by worry, by fear, and anxiety. He writes a letter to the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Chabad, and the third Rebbe of Chabad responds like this. Stephanie, would you read text number 6, please? Page 14.
Sure. Even if we are emotionally afraid, we are able to divorce our thought, speech, and action from that emotion. The essential thing is not to contemplate or discuss the fear at all, but to do the perfect opposite. Immediately upon letting go of the thoughts entirely, the fear will dissolve on its own. At the very least, it will become instantly dormant and not felt in the body. And then, over the course of several days, it will completely dissolve to the point that it will not enter our mind at all. Removal of the thoughts leads to dissipation of the fear because emotions are entirely reliant upon intellectual focus for their existence, which requires active thought. Therefore, by removing all thought from the matter, the intellectual power is withdrawn from the emotion, with the result that the emotion ceases to be activated. It is worth training yourself to remove all negativity, for we must rid ourselves from all fear, including justifiable fear, as I wrote. This is certainly true in your case, where there is nothing to worry about whatsoever, thank God, in terms of your health and financial situation.
So Rabbi Freitas writes to the Tzemach Tzedek that he is consumed with fear and anxiety, and the Tzemach Tzedek says to him a very simple solution: stop thinking about it. What do you think about that advice? Someone has problems, they come to you, or maybe you're the one with the problems, you come to someone and they say, oh, here's the perfect solution: stop thinking about it. Is that good advice? Does that typically work when someone says to you, stop thinking about it? Right? There's that famous experiment where you say to somebody, don't think about a pink elephant. Right? Have you heard this? What are you going to think about? Right? There's only one thing you're going to think about. You're going to think about this pink elephant. So is this actually possible to do? Hold on a second. I've got to go backwards here. Okay, it's not letting me go backwards. Let me see if it'll let me go backwards. Okay, so now if we could just pause here for one moment, right? Give me 30 seconds. I've got to grab a cup of coffee and I'll be right back. All right, 30 seconds. You can count it. All right, I am back. That was approximately 30 seconds. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I don't drink coffee, right? The occasional caramel macchiato, but I don't drink coffee. I did not just go run to grab some coffee. Did a little bit of an experiment here. For that 30 seconds, what were you thinking about? What were you thinking about? I'm sure your mind wandered to various things, right? Maybe you thought about some laundry that needs to be done later. Maybe you thought about whether the garbage has to be taken out for tomorrow, right? Some work-related project. Maybe you thought of the great tragedy of the Packers being bounced out in the playoffs, right? Your mind wandered to something. However, I turned on my camera, and all of a sudden, you're back right here, you're with me, and you're concentrating. Did I do that? Did I force you to do that? No. Your mind went wherever it wanted to go. For 30 seconds, I stepped away. Wherever your mind decided to go, it went. However, when I turned on the camera, you decided that instead of continuing to think about whatever your mind wandered to, you decided you're going to think about the class. You decided that you're going to focus on what we're doing now. This is exactly what the Tzemach Tzedek was saying. This is within our control. This is within our ability. It's completely natural. We do it all the time. We can choose what we think about. Yes, ideas, they wander, they pop in, they might be interesting. But at any moment, we can choose to focus. So what do we do when we have negative emotions that we're experiencing? Anger, jealousy, and whatever the emotion is, replace that negative thought with a positive one. You're thinking about something negative. It's producing this negative emotion. We have the ability to stop thinking about it. We can choose to think about something else that's positive, that will put us in a better frame of mood. And this is what the Tzemach Tzedek continues to say in the letter, text number 7, Phil, page 16, text number 7.
Okay, the primary method of removing worrying thoughts from your mind is by redirecting your mind towards other matters. You can replace them with thoughts of necessary material matters that bring you joy, and you can contemplate God's Torah that delights the heart. The latter is best achieved through creating a fixed schedule of daily Torah study, which is particularly effective with a study partner.
Your mind is racing all the time, right? It's constantly producing thoughts. You can't stop it, but you can replace that negative thought with a much more positive thought, and that's going to have a real concrete effect and impact on your emotion. Because essentially, your mind has only room for one thought at a time. Now, you might know the story with Moshe Dayan, right? The famous Israeli general. He's speeding down some Israeli highway. He gets pulled over by a cop. The cop looks at him and says, Moshe Dayan, do you know how fast you're going? Do you have any idea how fast you're going on this highway? And Moshe Dayan looks up at the cop and says, listen, I have an eye patch. I only got one functioning eye, right? I can either look at the road or I could look at the speedometer, right? Which one do you want me to be looking at? The same thing applies to our mind, right? You can only have one thought in your head at a time. What kind of thought do you want to put in your head? Because you can choose what it is that you think about. If you think a positive thought, it's going to work. Do this right now. Think about this for a second. Think about a wonderful, beautiful, happy occasion. Your wedding, a bar mitzvah, a high school graduation, when you got your first job, right? When Tom Brady was still playing for the Patriots. Whatever thought that you want, you can pause for a second. You could recognize, wait a minute, I'm thinking in my mind right now negative thoughts and it's producing negative emotions. I'm going to think about something pleasant. I'm going to think about something good. I'm going to think about something wholesome and something healthy. And that's going to work. So hold on a second. All right. Introduce into your mind a positive thought. It's going to affect your mood. And then the Tzemach Tzedek says, even better than just thinking about something positive, study some Torah. There's nothing better than studying Torah. It's intellectually stimulating. It's engaging. It's overly positive. It's spiritual. It's divine. It's meaningful. It's holy. If you are engaged in negative thought process, pause, recognize where these emotions are coming from, think about something positive, even better, study some Torah. This is doable. Now we are going to be practicing a meditation right now. It's something different. We've never done this in previous classes, but I hope that you will open yourself up to it. I'm not saying this is how you have to do it every time in the future, but this is a way to do it. So close your eyes for a second. And now again, you don't have to close your eyes. You will not be punished if you don't. Close your eyes for a second, right? Relax, right? Drop your shoulders, right? Breathe in, breathe out, right? Get yourself in a loose, comfortable position. And I want you to think about an embarrassing event that took place in your life. We all have in our life a moment, a time where we were embarrassed. Relationships, in school, at work, in front of friends, right? Think about it. Imagine what was said, who was there, what their voices sounded like, how red your cheeks felt. Think about the consequences of that embarrassment, how it felt a day later, 2 days later, how it felt when you had to interact with that other person, or if you saw anyone who was there. So think about this for a moment. Put yourself back into that circumstance and allow yourself to feel those emotions. Now let's think about something else. Now think about a situation in life where you had an absolute great success. You achieved a goal, a memorable moment in life. Maybe it's when you graduated from college. Maybe it's when you had your first child. Right? Think about when you had your first child. The sound of the cry that the baby made. The first time that you held the baby in your hand, the softness of the skin, right? The smell, the aroma of that baby. The first time that you were able to really hug and kiss your child. Think about that. Now come back to me for a moment here. Was that doable? Right? I set you down one path where you were thinking about something that was negative, and you were feeling, hopefully, those emotions in a painful and powerful way. And then we thought about something else. I said, oh, let's think about something positive. Now, again, we're practicing now, right? It was not a real life episode. But I hope that this demonstrates that we are in control. It's actually something you can do. Your mind is focusing on one thing. Little bit of meditation, choosing what you're thinking about, focusing on it. All of a sudden, you can go in a completely different direction, and your emotions can completely change. The more you do it, the more you practice it, the more natural it will become, and the easier you're going to be able to do it in the course of daily life. Now I want to take this whole idea of Jewish meditation a step further. Jewish meditation doesn't only have the ability to change your mood, it actually has the ability to change your reality. Let's go to text number 8. This is the next point that the Tzemach Tzedek makes in his letter. I will read this text number 8. To the contrary, you should speak and act in a manner that projects positivity, as described above, so that these positive emotions will be established within you. In this way, a spirit of joy and good-heartedness will descend upon you from above. I say this on the basis of a teaching I received from my holy grandfather of blessed memory, who shared an insight authored by Rabbi Dov Ber, the Maggid is rich, into the verse, like a person's appearance upon it from above. This is from the book of Ezekiel, the prophet Yechezkel. The Maggid would read the verse this way. According to the feelings a person displays down here in this world, which is like a person's appearance, so is the nature of that which rests upon the person from above. In light of this teaching, my grandfather, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, did not permit me to sing a melancholy tune during the evening prayer. After I had completed my prayer, he explained the reasoning for objecting to my choice of melody and shared the above insight in the name of the Maggid of blessed memory. The Tzemach Tzedek is conveying a very powerful message based on a biblical verse. Our thoughts and the attitude that we have, they attract similar type experiences in our life. Negative thoughts, negative attitudes attract and draw negative experiences. Positive thoughts, positive attitudes elicit and attract and bring into our life positive experiences. You've heard of the law of attraction? This is the Jewish law of attraction. Positive or negative thoughts and attitudes bring, draw after, and attract positive or negative experiences. How does this work? It follows the spiritual technology that we described earlier. We talked about the soul having 10 powers, 3 intellectual, 7 emotional. Where do these 10 powers come from? Right? We'll get to this slide in a second. These 10 powers mirror the 10 powers that God used to create the world. When the Torah says we are created in the image of God, what does that mean? It means our soul mirrors and parallels God's creative energy. Our soul has 10 powers because God possesses 10 spheros, and it's those spheres which he used to create the world. Our soul powers flow, how our soul powers flow impacts the way that cosmic energy flows to us. It's all interconnected. Let's go to text number 10 from the Zohar. We're going to skip to text number 10. Debbie, I believe it's your turn on page 20.
Okay, you said on page 20. Yeah. Okay, so and observe. Our world is always ready to receive the spiritual flow that emanates from above. The upper world provides in accordance with the emotional state below in this world. If the state below is joyous, then correspondingly abundance flows from above. But if the state below is one of sadness, then correspondingly the flow of blessing is constricted. We are therefore directed, serve God with joy, because mortal joy elicits corresponding supernal joy.
So the Zohar explains this idea so beautifully. Because our soul powers, right, parallel and mirror God's powers, when we tap into that soul power within ourselves, it elicits that corresponding power within God himself, and then the blessings are able to come down here. Now, if you look at the PowerPoint here, it's not perfect, but you can see the idea here. When we arouse within ourselves kindness, for example, when we tap into it, when we focus on that, when we act upon that, then you know what happens? Kindness is aroused within God and flows towards us as well. Which means when we think positive thoughts, when we think good, holy, beautiful ideas, we are able to elicit that corresponding thought, idea within God himself, and blessings and goodness and kindness is going to flow. When we think of negative, depressing, and frustrating things, that wakes up the corresponding divine power, the divine sphere. And we're going to encounter that. That is what is going to flow in our life as well. How we feel impacts our reality in a concrete way, not just in an emotional way, not just in a psychological way, but Kabbalah teaches how we feel impacts our reality in a real concrete way. Our thoughts themselves have incredible power. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, he writes in text number 11. Stephanie, if you could read text number 11 on page 21.
Sure. The psalmist states that one who trusts in God will be enveloped in kindness. We can infer the reverse as well. One who is constantly anxious of punishment associates themselves with strict judgment that can lead to negative consequences, God forbid. In line with the verse, their fears I will bring to them. We become attached to whatever we contemplate. If we contemplate matters associated with severity, we become attached to judgment. If we trust in God's kindness, our souls will become attached to that kindness, and we will indeed be enveloped in kindness.
So these texts really highlight the power and the importance of Jewish meditation. Being in control of our thoughts, right? Of consciously choosing our thoughts, right? Choosing to think positively, right? It is not, well, we'll get this in a second, right? It's not just for our emotional well-being. Yes, it has the ability to reshape how you feel, but it also has the ability to elicit a positive response in the universe and actually affect, impact, and change our reality. So thinking positive creates positive energy around us, which leads to positive things in our life. And of course, we know the opposite of that is true as well. Thinking negative thoughts tends to bring negativity in our life as well. I'm going to play a video which has the key points from the lesson, and we'll then conclude with some takeaway ideas.
Lesson 1. Do you mind? The surprising powers of Jewish meditation. 1. Meditation is an authentic Jewish practice that plays a large role in Jewish life. 2. We have control over our feelings and have the capacity to overcome negative feelings and experiences. 3. We have the ability to be in control of our thoughts and can choose what we think about at any given moment. 4. Our thinking feeds our emotions. By getting rid of negative thoughts, we cut off negative feelings. 5. Meditating on positive thoughts develops a positive mindset and positive emotions. 6. Positive meditation actually impacts the world around us and elicits a positive response from God, which shapes reality for the good.
Right, some practical takeaways from today's class. Number 1 is we have to be aware of and control your thoughts. We're always thinking, but we're not always aware of what we're thinking. Kind of like how we're always breathing, right? 24/7 we're breathing. But are we aware of it? Are we consciously breathing? But if you pause and say, okay, I'm going to close my eyes, I'm going to think, and you're going to feel the air come in, you're going to feel the air go out. Now you're consciously breathing. We have to do the same thing with our thoughts. When we recognize that we're in a particular mood, we're having a particular emotional experience, this is a time to pause and consciously recognize, what is it that I am thinking about? Identify what you're thinking about and recognize, is it positive or negative? Are the thoughts that I'm thinking about what is directly controlling and impacting and affecting the emotional experience that I'm having? If it's negative, you got to start thinking about something positive. Ideally, study a little Torah, right? Do something Jewish. The main thing is to keep your mind busy by being occupied on something good. Has it ever happened to you that you're at home, nothing to do, nothing on the schedule, nothing on the agenda? You know what ends up happening? Every 5 seconds, you're in the fridge. Every 5 seconds, you're in the pantry, you're in the cabinet, you're snacking, you're munching, because you got nothing else going on. However, what happens if you're working on a big project? You're busy, your mind is occupied. It's very easy to skip a meal and you don't even notice it because you're doing something that's valuable and important. The same thing is with our mind. If your mind is not occupied with something valuable and productive and good and wholesome, it's going to drift into all kinds of other areas that are not productive. So recognize what you're thinking about and choose purposefully to think, to do, study Torah, whatever it is, to put yourself in a positive frame of mind. Invest in your mind, and you're going to have incredible positive results. Invest your mind in wholesome things, right? Keep your mind busy. This is exactly what Jewish meditation is all about. Don't wait till you're experiencing a crisis of negative emotion, there's anxiety and fear, and it's taking over your life to attempt to do these things. Set a daily time for positive meditation. Judaism has it built into your schedule. From the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning, we say the prayer of Moda'ani. We pause, we don't just jump out of bed, and we reflect for a minute, and we're grateful for that fact that we're alive, that we have energy, and that we're accomplishing in life, and we're doing good things in life, and that we have a family in life, and that we're part of a community. Set aside time. This is not for 2 hours of meditation. 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, however long you can. Moda'ani in the morning. A person davens, you say Shema in the morning. You make brachas throughout the day. There are so many opportunities that we have where we train ourselves to think positive, right? We got to train ourselves to think positive. It's absolutely doable. This is the power of Jewish meditation. Any questions, comments, suggestions? And before we go, just want to remember you can continue your learning online, myjli.com/meditation. There's a few meditation videos, there's articles, there's more information on this topic. And of course, in the book, right at the end of each lesson, there's so much more material that you could look into. If you've enjoyed the class, you thought it was meaningful and productive, I hope you will share it with a friend, with a spouse. The class will be recorded. It will be put, it was recorded. It will be put on the shul's YouTube channel. You can watch it again and share it with other people. Again, any questions, comments? Yes, Phil.
You know, in that 30-second break that you provided, I got to thinking, are there, you know, so maybe this is really simplistic and I am far from an expert on thoughts, but there are some thoughts that come to mind about what if this, what if that, you know, so somebody, your child comes home late from an engagement. Oh my goodness, what could have happened? Could they have been in some sort of dilemma, car crash or whatever? You start thinking about all these things. And then that's one set of negative thoughts. And then the other set of negative thought is if you get a letter from the IRS, which is like, okay, you're being audited, it's real. Yeah, see an accountant right away. It's like, okay, I have to be concerned about that. So there's some reality, some hard black and white document that says you have to be worried about this. And then there's the thoughts that come to mind that are probably that you shouldn't be even thinking about because they're unfounded. And both of them can wreak havoc on you. So can you differentiate between the two? Is there a way to manage these different types of negative thoughts because they're based on different things, or should they be lumped all together?
I can only tell you from my experience, and I do have a lot of experience with this topic. It all starts when I was about 17 years old, and I'm in yeshiva in New York, studying 7:30 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, 6 days a week, even school on Shabbos on Saturday night. when I felt that at that moment in time, I should have been in public school, I should have been on a baseball team because my future was to be a pitcher in the major leagues. I was very upset. I was very frustrated. I hated school. I hated yeshiva. I felt the entire day was just one experience of torture, right? From morning till night. I hated it. But then I came to a conclusion in the beginning of the year. Is this any way to live? To be upset, to be frustrated, to be negative, to be depressed the whole day, and wait for the 2 hours of enjoyment that I can have after school is over until I got to do the whole thing again. Much better, much smarter to be happier all the time. I made a decision that I will not allow the external circumstances of my life to affect and impact my mood. That I'm going to be happy the whole day, even though I'm not doing what I like. So it's something that I worked on and I practiced on for a long time. And there's all kinds of different circumstances where this comes into play. I remember one day where it was a Friday afternoon, and I was driving with my family from Olympia to Seattle for Shabbos. It was in the winter. Shabbos came in very early, and there was crazy rush hour traffic. Anyone who knows what it means, rush hour traffic, Seattle area, it's painful. And we were passing through Tacoma, which is about 45 minutes away from Seattle. And I'm looking at the traffic and the time. It's impossible. There is no way that we're going to get there. No way. It can't happen. I was so stressed. My heart was pounding. I was so nervous. I got my whole family. Where are we going to be for Shabbos? What are we going to do? How do you even get off the highway? And I said to myself, no negative thoughts allowed. It's not allowed. No negative thought can enter my brain. Only we're going to happen. I'm going to get there. It's going to work out. And I blocked it off. So that's it. We're going to get there. There's no other way. Right? And you know what? We made it with seconds, literally seconds to spare. We pulled up to my in-laws' house before Shabbos. Right? Just blocked it out. More recently, right? My wife, right, Chava, right, she was diagnosed with this uterine leiomyosarcoma, right? Total shock, right? Your life is completely turned upside down, right? There's a lot of crazy stuff. My wife is on all kinds of forums and groups, and there's a lot of stuff that's not good out there. But I said, I don't think about this stuff. And again, there's nothing more real than this, right? It doesn't help. There's no benefit, right? It doesn't help, and there's no solution to it. So what's it going to help? But when I'm positive and my wife is positive, right? We're happier. I like to be happy. I don't like to be afraid. I like to be happy. My kids like it when we're happy. My kids need us to be happy. It's healthier to be happy. It's healthier for the body. And as we learned today, it actually elicits health from above. The same thing applies to the IRS. Real, very real. There's nothing more real than when the IRS is after you. But being upset and frustrated right now at this moment doesn't solve the problem, doesn't help, doesn't contribute to the solution in any way. So it doesn't help me to think about it now. And this is how I go about my life. If it doesn't help me to think about it now, I'm not thinking about it. If I need to think about the IRS right now, I will think about the IRS right now, and you work and you strategize and there's a lawyer or whatever, and you got to figure it out. But if it's not now, it doesn't help. Whether I'm sitting up in bed thinking about it, whether it's distracting me while I'm doing something else, it doesn't help. And I have the ability to control my thoughts. Again, not always is it easy, but knowing that I have the ability to do it, it works. And so you have to take a step back and say, I'm going to do it actively. I'm purposefully. I'm going to think about something else. I'm going to change what I'm thinking about and think about something more positive, holy, get busy, distract yourself, do something, then learning some Torah. It works. So yes, every circumstance is different, and every circumstance has its unique seriousness and urgency, but this message can be applied to all of these various situations. Yes, Debbie.
Yeah, so that's it's really amazing to me. I didn't believe that there was so much power that we have until I've been through a lot of training, the way I've been doing things with my courses and my work. And it's really interesting. It fits in alignment with this Jewish process that you just spoke about, this Jewish meditation. It's really beautiful. And we're so much more the choice, the power of choice, yet at the same time, it's like training in tiny little habit change. So it's not so simple. It's like a matter of start with something really simple, and those tiny little steps you practice and train your brain on something much simpler than the IRS or whatever, then you're training yourself to control your thoughts. And so it's not like you suddenly can do this, because we have this habit. It's habit change, really. It's tiny little habits change huge things gradually over time.
Absolutely. Right. The more you do it, the better you get at it. You strengthen your spiritual, intellectual muscles, so to speak, until ultimately it can become second nature. But yes, it's a process. It takes time, but you make it part of your life. Again, that's where davening comes into play. You daven every single day, right? Sometimes even daven 3 times a day. And you have opportunity to focus your mind on positive ideas and see how those positive ideas actually impact and affect your life. Training, you do it every day. Davening, nothing better than that. All right, thank you so much for joining us for lesson number 1. Look forward to seeing you for lesson number 2 next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Have a fabulous evening, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, Rabbi.